Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to Our Nerdiest Thing. Today, we will be discussing Pride Month book recommendations and a lot more. I was trying to think of something clever and didn't.
And the other nerdy things we usually speak about on this podcast.
Those fun things, too. Please make sure you listen all the way to the end. We have an interview with author Antoine Bandelet, and he is a delight to talk to.
He is so freaking funny.
He is very funny.
I wasn't on that interview, but I felt like when we saw him at Imaginarium, he was like my best friend.
Yes.
It was like we hadn't seen each other for 5 years, and he was like, friend! And I was like, oh, hey.
Yeah, I kind of...
And he has braces, and
I
that makes him really adorable.
Like, does he think we're all the same person? Like, he wasn't sure who he actually talked to?
I will say, I have gone up to people at events that we've been to before, and they're like, Whitney, right? And I'm like, nope, Deb.
Yeah, but we all have glasses, and we all have dark hair.
Yeah.
Yep. But he was really fun to talk to. So please make sure you listen to that. And before we get into any of our other nerdy things, Deb, will you please share with us our nerdiest cocktail?
Of course. Tonight or today. We're actually recording during the day this time, and we don't normally do that.
The sun is out.
So that means that Mindy and I can't get like white girl wasted like we do sometimes. So we'll have to be careful. This drink is called Daddy Issues, and like I always say, you can get the recipe off of ournerdiestthing.com or follow us on Instagram and see what it's all about in our Thursday read along. But it does have Fireball in it, which is quite tasty.
Always a good time with
And you're
Fireball.
supposed to put really expensive cherry juice in it, but we just use grenadine because that's stupid. Because we make cocktails every week and we can't afford that shit.
Yeah, cherries are cherries, you know. That's fine. If it says cherry on the label, it's good enough.
Yep, that's what he said. Although that's messed up.
Unless you're a bougie ramen restaurant in DC that says there's cherry in a drink and there is not.
Why didn't you ask if it was bitter before you ordered it?
It was 4-day-old coffee that they said had vodka in it. It was not.
It was bad.
Oh man,
what a time!
Yeah. So if you're watching our studio feed, you can see it's like really pretty. It's kind of like pink.
It is.
Cheers. Yeah. Cheers.
It's like a grapefruity kind of flavor, kind of color.
Color.
Okay, yes, definitely on the color.
Not
also,
flavor,
our studio
color.
feed's on YouTube, just FYI.
Yeah.
You can like and subscribe.
Good times.
Yeah, follow us.
We have all kinds of fun teasers on there and all good stuff.
Yeah.
Mindy's quite the tease.
Well, let's get into our nerdy news. We all three actually have nerdy news this week.
What?
I always have nerdy news.
I know, but we don't.
Yeah, we don't. So,
Especially
Mindy,
me.
why don't you go first?
Well, I found a couple, just going with the theme of Pride, I found a couple of LGBTQ upcoming releases. So one is called A Darker Mischief by Derek Millman, and it comes out on July 2nd. And it's, quote, this is the quote that it's described as, which drew me in. A work of dark academia like no other. A boarding school thriller about a queer teen from Mississippi who finds himself swept into a world of old money, privilege, and the secret society at the heart of it all.
Ooh.
I'm always drawn to series like stories with a secret society for some reason.
Well, and you put dark academia in there, and I'm like, I'm in.
I know, right? She's in like half a seat.
What was the movie from like the late 90s? Or
The Skulls.
The Skulls.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, didn't it have Ryan Felipe?
That's what
in
I'm
it?
thinking.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's who it was, but that sounds right. It was that era.
It was exactly what you think a secret society movie will be about.
A bunch of white boys.
Yeah, and then there's a girl that gets in too deep, and like he's got to save her, and some people die.
I don't know why those always intrigue me. I just think it makes for a really good story.
I like it in a book.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever saw the movie, but I remember
The Ritual
movie.
by Chantal Tessier that Mindy thought was paranormal romance is about a secret society.
Okay, well then maybe I will like it.
That's like me thinking every book is about
don't read it.
Mindy, you won't like it.
I got enough to
keep
read
telling
anyways.
you.
I have enough to read
gosh,
anyways.
Very intense sexual scenarios.
Oh.
Like BDSM stuff.
Oh, no thank you. No thank you.
I don't know that I disagree with that. I like me some Vicious from J.R. Ward.
No, that's not intense.
Okay. So moving on. The next one I found was called I Will Never Leave You by Kara A. Kennedy, and it doesn't come out till July 23rd, but it's about a girl who's being haunted by the ghost of her toxic ex-girlfriend.
Oh.
And this ghost gives her an ultimatum to either help her possess another girl or be framed for her murder.
Oh.
So that seems kind of dark and twisted and fun.
I've told my husband if he sleeps with my friends when I die, I'm going to haunt him.
I'm going to haunt Robbie no matter what.
Me too.
You're like, I'll never let go.
It doesn't matter what he does.
I'm just going to play practical jokes on here.
Right. So, like, it means a lot when the meaning changes when you're alive or dead. Because if you're like, I'll never let go, and then like you're dead, and you're like, I'm never letting go.
Yeah.
Poor Robbie.
Forever.
Robbie's gonna come over and be like, she's here. I'll be like, I just wanted you to come over so we could like see you and the kids, and he's like, she won't leave.
Oh, that's probably true. I have two nerdy newses. Nerdies news. What's the plural of that?
Nudie.
Nudie nerds.
Nerdy news items.
Nudie nerds is going to be our new segment for our YouTube subscribers only.
That's just Whitney's segment.
That's our Patreon, our new Patreon idea.
OnlyFans Our Nerdiest Thing. The podcast in the nude.
We would make us so much money.
That's for people who have a fetish with awkward people.
They're like, their boobs jiggle boobily when they laugh all the time.
Oh man, good times, good times. Okay, well, the things that I have to share for the nerdy news do not have that kind of vibe at all. The first is Riley Saker's new book, which is not that vibe. Middle of the Night, I've talked about it a little bit.
Have you finished it yet?
No.
Okay.
I'm still, I think maybe 20% in. I'm still pretty early on.
In your defense, I drove for 12 hours the other day.
Yeah,
so
I have
listened to
not.
like 7 hours of it.
But that did come out last week. So you've got, it's kind of true crimey so far anyway.
Yeah, it doesn't have the as much of a paranormal twist as some of his other stuff does.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more
then
true crime.
I'm going to not wait for that then. Because I'm like, when's the ghost coming, right?
So there is ghosts. It's
yeah.
just not, you're not going to get the same thing like The House Across the Lake where you're
Right.
like, wait, there's like a spirit in the water?
Right.
Yeah, it's not like that. But it was, I haven't wrote my full review yet, but I said I can't decide if it's 3.5 or 4 stars. So
Ooh.
yeah, I can't decide.
Well, we'll see when I finish. We'll see what I think too. But I like it so far. It is very true crimey. So a kid disappeared and now we're 30 years later and stuff is happening. And that's pretty much what's going on. And then this is not until September, but friend of the podcast, Elle Mitchell, she has a new duology coming out. And the first book is called Pretty Poisoned. And it's going to be September 9th, 2024. So I wanted to just throw that out there. It's a Why Choose rock star dark romance where the rock stars are brothers. And she's putting a very big emphasis on the dark in dark romance and said that there's a lot of blood play.
But the brothers don't hook up, right?
I have no idea. I
It's
really
Elle
don't
Mitchell,
know.
so you can never tell.
I know. Well,
She likes to. She likes to
She
likes to put it
says
out there.
she's been saying check the trigger warnings like hardcore.
She always says that, though.
Well,
No,
I don't know. There's
a brother
there's never
on brother
been-
might be my limit.
I was gonna say there's not blood play in her other stuff.
That's true.
So
True.
I need more information before I'm like, yeah, I'll arc read that. I need to know more.
Sometimes blood play can mean different things too. Like I was reading a book, which I'm not into this, and if you are, that's okay. But like he like took his knife and like put his initials in her thigh. Like that's technically blood play.
I get the feeling that is not what's happening in this book.
Technically, all the vampire paranormal romance I read has blood play in it.
Oh, well,
I mean,
that is true.
Yeah.
So
I don't think that's what we're talking about here. Just the vibes she's given off.
we're not
it
getting
feels,
Saltburn blood play, are we?
Genuinely, that's kind of the vibe that I'm getting from her warnings. It's like Saltburn kind of stuff.
Okay.
I would say weirdness, but
I
feel
really
like
love
that's
Elle, and
negative.
she's an excellent writer.
She really is.
I'm going to let
So,
you read that and then tell me.
I'm gonna find out more before I arc read it. But she's great, and it's in September.
Oh, cool.
And it fits Pride Month because it's
White shoes.
Does white shoes automatically fit into?
Oh, I guess
No.
not necessarily.
Yeah,
because
it
That would
doesn't,
be
does it?
polyamorous.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean you're queer.
because the bonds that tie isn't.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I wish it was.
There was no brother play in that either.
No,
I just wanted some Atlas and Gabe play.
Me
That's
too.
it.
Yeah,
Come on.
apparently-
Where is that novella, Jay Bree? It'd fall off the shelves into my pants.
Oh, man. All right, Deb, what is your nerdy news?
So I have two. My first one, it just comes out this week when this is releasing. It's Sleep by Death by Kaylin Barron, who we met at Imaginarium last year. And it is a cursed Snow White retelling.
Oh.
And she does all YA, so her stuff stays pretty light trigger-wise, but she's an excellent writer. And then the second one is The Glass Sword by Kim Alexander. It's the 5th book in her new World Magic series, where consequences beget consequences. Amid dying kingdoms and the dying embers of old loves and older hatreds, friends become betrayers, lovers keep secrets, and someone or something is out for blood-red revenge.
Ooh.
I felt like I was...
Kim.
Yeah, she's really, really great. So, that comes out, and I know she's looking for ARC readers for it. And if you've not read the first 4 books, she will let you ARC read those too. So, yeah, that's
awesome.
Yeah, not
Sounds
much is
fun.
really coming out in the next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did find Keanu, when I was looking for book releases, Keanu Reeves has a book coming out like late July.
Does he now?
It's a fiction. I was like,
Oh, like
that
it's not
Keanu
like a
Reeves?
memoir?
No, and he
Oh.
wrote it with somebody, and I was like, I'm going to save that for later because it's not until later in July. But I was
Okay.
like, Keanu, there's only one Keanu Reeves, right?
Well,
like this isn't some random other Keanu Reeves. But yeah, I thought that was super random.
I need to look it up while we're talking, but I just finished a book where she was like, oh, no, it was a book where like she is obsessed. Oh, it's Leather and Lark, where she is
Yeah.
obsessed with Keanu Reeves, which I think
Constantine.
is hilarious.
Yeah.
Constantine's era Keanu Reeves, which I
Yeah.
think is really cute.
Yeah, that's Leather and Lark. So speaking of Leather and Lark,
Yeah, speaking of that, that's what I'm reading right now.
is it?
Yeah. Well, so I haven't
I mean,
quite
book
started.
clubs like in 2 days.
Yeah,
you know?
I got 2 days to read it.
I read it really fast.
I was gonna say it's definitely one of those that I feel. I mean, I read Butcher and Blackbird in one day.
Yeah,
So.
it was the same kind of read for
Yeah.
me.
So I can see me just diving in, and I'll probably have to leave the house though because my family will not leave me the fuck alone.
Same.
I'm like, because
Same.
my husband works from home now, and so it's even worse. Like in the summers, like my kids used to bug me, but now it's mostly my husband, and I'm like, leave me. I'm just gonna go to a coffee shop or something. I love you, but no.
Yeah. No, I'm the
So,
same.
but yeah, that's what I'm reading.
Well, I hope you enjoy it
I'm sure I will.
because, well, I enjoyed it. I don't know if I should say since we haven't had book club to discuss it, but I liked it.
I liked it. Nothing's ever going to beat Butcher and Blackbird because that book was just kind of brilliant
Yeah.
and funny, and there's still not really
I was
anything
gonna say
written
there's
like it.
nothing
Yeah.
like that. book.
And she really set her up. It's going to be very hard for her to top that.
Yeah.
But I will say I did really like Leather and Lark.
It was really good. I liked it. Deb, what are you reading?
I am ARC reading Beneath These Cursed Stars by Lexi Ryan. She wrote the Hollow Vows duology that I actually fell in love with last year. And so I just saw that it was her and requested
got
to
it,
ARC
yeah.
read it. And I knew it was her next book in fantasy because she also writes contemporary romance. Little did I know that the book is set in the same world as the Hollow Vows duology. It's just 3 years later, and it's about her sister, the one that was kept captive by the king.
Oh.
So, like, she's out and, struggling with all of her PTSD, and it's all
Yeah.
her story about, the uprising against now her sister queen's throne. So, really exciting. It's been really good so far.
Nice.
But when I was like, wait, I know these characters. 'Cause I typically, if it's an author I love, I don't read the synopsis. I like to be surprised.
yeah.
And I was like, wait, I know these guys. Hey.
it's like not as much world building as you maybe thought it was going to be.
Right. Yeah.
That's a nice surprise. Well, Deb will be thrilled to hear what I've finished reading Manacled. So
Finally. God.
you're welcome.
Tell them how many stars you gave it, Whitney.
I did give it 5 stars. I'm going to go ahead and just do my convince you to read it because it was really good. And except I'm scrolling to the wrong part of my notes. Whoops. Okay, here we go. So I know, what am I, 2 years late on the trend? Or only one?
No, I read it in January.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm not as late. I thought I was like 2 years behind everybody
Well,
else.
it's because
But that's okay.
it's been out for a while, but also that's how much I've bugged you about it.
That is true. So it's a Bookstagram favorite. And I was realizing when I finished reading it that somehow I have avoided spoilers for Manacled, even though I've seen people talking about it a lot, which is
People
nice.
are really good about not sharing
Yeah,
the spoilers.
I realized like, oh, I genuinely don't know what's going to happen as I'm finishing reading this. And I thought that was nice of everybody. So thank you to the internet at large. I'm looking over to thank you.
Looking at the camera.
to the internet for not for not
Thank
spoiling
you
it
to
for
our
me.
5 subscribers for not telling Whitney what this is about.
So, Deb, I think your description is best when you said that it's Handmaid's Tale meets Harry Potter, right?
Yeah.
Voldemort won and Harry died. And that is exactly what it is. But I was really under the impression that, because I think it did do this for a lot of other people, but just not for me. I thought that it was going to emotionally devastate me, which is part of the reason why I didn't want to read it for so long.
I don't know how it didn't emotionally devastate you.
It just didn't. I don't know. It just didn't.
Maybe your kids were interrupting you too much.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably true. So I was happy that it did not like send me into that like sobbing in my bed kind of place, because that's why I avoided it for so long.
Right.
So I was happy that didn't happen. But then I also kind of felt like, is there something wrong with me? But
Well, yes, but not that.
I don't know. I think maybe I'm just like in the wrong time of my cycle or something to not be emotionally damaged. I'm not sure. But while it did not bring me down into depths of despair, it was a really beautiful story that I really can't say enough good things about. I will not be referring to this as a fanfic, even though that's technically what it is. But I think that term fanfic just has too much negative connotation for
does.
something as brilliant as Manacled. And like, okay, yes, it is an already established world and it's already established characters. But this writer didn't turn not only the story on its head, but also the characters. Like the characters are not the same characters that you would be expecting from Harry Potter.
They are fundamentally changed by losing the war.
Yes,
and doing
even before
horrible
that,
things.
even there are some flashbacks before the end of the war. They are not the characters you.
They are doing
think.
horrible things to survive.
Yeah,
all of them are.
All of them are. Yeah, it was really good. There is a feminist reading in this story, Handmaid's Tale vibes, that I wasn't expecting. Like, I just didn't really know that that's what it was, right? That I really, really loved. Like, that's my favorite part of the story, I think. And it was very beautifully written. It was very well thought out. It's creative, and it stands on its own as a Harry Potter adjacent story that really is a lot more than a fanfic, way better than The Cursed Child.
I would say it in the Harry Potter universe, it's better than any Harry Potter book I read.
I would agree. It's
wow.
It's right up there with Deathly Hallows for me.
100%.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay,
It's
so
really good.
because I know I'm going to get peer pressured into reading this now.
Not only by us, but by people in our Instagram feed too.
They're like,
Well,
okay.
No pressure for me because I get it.
But how does one acquire this?
It's on
AO3, the Archives of Our
Okay,
Own, and you
okay.
can download it and send it to your Kindle that way.
Okay.
That's what I did.
I think our listeners might want to know that too. So
That's a good point. Yeah, you can just look it up, like Manacled PDF or something like that, and or send Manacled to your Kindle, and then it'll pop up and you can download the whole thing.
So I will say the author also worked with an artist, and there's illustrations within the book as well.
Yeah.
And I actually, as soon as I was done writing the book, went to that author's Redbubble and bought a bunch of the illustrations because they're really beautifully
Nice.
done.
Yeah, it was really, really good. And like, there's a lot more that I would like to say, but obviously I'm not going to, because then that would spoil a bunch of stuff.
So
and I'm not gonna
interesting
do
about that
so.
author is she got a trad publishing deal for Manacled, but I don't know how they're going to get around the copyright.
I know.
How did Cursed Child do it?
I think
Did they get
J.K.
permission
Rowling signed off on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I think she got money and stuff for that. Like, you know what I mean?
Well,
so,
I mean, she's on the book too.
like, she's part of the writing
yes.
team, isn't she?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that with this, because kind of what really made this book so captivating too, and why the author was able to take it so far, was because she didn't have to world build. So if she has to world build in this new iteration of it, I don't know if it's going to be the same.
No.
Because you're already very connected to these characters.
Yeah.
Right.
True.
So I think if you're not a Harry Potter fan, you could read it and understand it. But I think if you are a Harry Potter fan, then it just hits in a different way.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
It was really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read
5
it, people.
stars.
Yeah.
It was good.
1 million stars from Deb. It's been my favorite book so far this year, and nothing's bumped it out.
Yeah, it was really, really, really good.
It was my first book of the year too, so like nothing's bumped it out yet. I'm like, well, shit, it can't get.
You should have saved it for the summer. Well, let's go into what we're watching.
Did you say what you're reading, Min?
Yeah.
Oh, Leather and Lark. Okay, sorry. What are you watching, Whit?
I finished Bridgerton season 3.
Me too.
Yeah, me too. But
Okay.
I'm watching some other things, but I want to talk about Bridgerton first.
I have a lot of things to say. What did you
right.
guys think about it?
It was okay.
That pause before anybody answers says it all, doesn't it?
My pause was I saw a lot of people complaining about it, and I thought it was fine.
I thought it was okay.
Having said that, and spoilers here, fast forward 30 seconds if you don't want to hear spoilers. I don't see why the queen was just cool with it.
Yeah, it felt a little contrived.
I did like, though, that Colin was like, I see you, and like, I get who you are, and like, you're this excellent writer. And at first I thought she quit writing altogether, and then they had like the little epilogue or whatever. But I did still really like it, but the queen thing kind of bothered me. And then do you guys realize my daughter pointed this out to me? So, whenever their mom, Violet, tells who's the older daughter? Francesca, when I met your dad, like I couldn't even speak and all that. And then she meets her husband's cousin at the end, and she can't speak, right? In the books, that is her husband, but they've gender bended it to make her queer, which I think is also kind of cool. But what are they going to do with that? She's just not going to be married anymore?
Well, I looked this up because I saw people were talking about you're taking away a huge part of Francesca's story. So apparently when she marries in the books, the cousin that shows up, infertility is a huge part of her story, trying to have kids. And so a lot of people were like, well, hold on a second. This infertility storyline happens with the second husband. And if there is no second husband, if it's going to be a woman, or you're going to take out all the infertility stuff. And so a lot of women I saw were like, that's kind of why I like Francesca, because I struggled with that too. And I was like, okay, this makes more sense.
So the second husband helps get her pregnant? Are they like in a polyamorous?
No, her...
Spoilers, we already said.
Her first husband dies.
In the book, yeah.
Her first husband dies. Like they're only married for a couple of years, and he has like a stroke or something. And dies in his sleep.
Okay.
And then she like falls in love with the cousin and marries the cousin. And then like, they're trying to have a family and they can't.
Okay.
And
so I'm assuming he is going to die and she's going to have feelings for this woman then.
That's what everybody's assuming, which there could still be, like she could have a twin brother or something that could still step in, but they didn't show that in the show, right? So, because I was like, why is everybody like? I didn't read the books, right? So I don't know.
I thought the whole time she was queer.
We talked about that.
Her character has never seemed really into that guy. It feels like they are hiding
a great
something.
Friendship.
I told my daughter, I wonder if they're both each other's bear. If he's also gay, maybe she already knows she's gay. I mean, I don't know, but I never felt like her character, to quite frankly, was very boring for me.
Agreed.
Okay. So I feel like I have so many things to say that we should just have another Bridgerton episode. But the thing with the queen, I hated that whole scene with Penelope, like, I'm Lady Whistledown. Because first of all, it did very much feel like what happened to all the stakes of, Colin being so upset that you're going to ruin everybody's lives in the Bridgerton family. And then the queen was like, okay,
she had
bye.
already written the letters, though, and told them she was going to do it.
Well, but there were no consequences because the queen was like, cool, bye.
Gossip is fun.
Right. And I was just like, what? And then it really bothered me that Colin just let her stand up there by herself after they had the conversation where she specifically said to him, I want you to stand beside me and support me. I thought they were like setting that up for him to literally be next to her.
Okay. Having said that, now Penelope and I do not have the same personality, but you could argue that he was standing by her by letting her stand up for herself.
I just didn't get that.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
I don't know. Like, now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, she wants to, like, if you think about it, because remember there was the whole thing about like, well, you can help me write my book, which she does end up doing. But like, and she was like, no, I want to stand on my own. I want to be my own person. So maybe it was sort of.
Well, she offered to help him with his book and he didn't want her to.
No,
it was the other way around.
But like later on, there was this whole thing about like, well, you can always just, when he was trying to talk her out, like, you don't have to do this Whistledown thing. You can help me with my book. And then at that point, she's like, well, then you're taking away a piece of me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, I see both sides. But it did seem, I don't know, I think maybe the stakes were a little higher with her being up there by herself, too. It
didn't land for me.
It felt a little more, until the queen was like, oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, bye.
Yeah.
I would not have liked it if he had gotten up there with her.
But like, what was the point of that whole conversation then? You know what I mean?
For him to support her as a writer, not to support her, I feel like, physically.
Did we actually see him support her as a writer, though?
Yeah. Because she keeps writing, and then she does help him write his book.
Okay, it did not land. It did not land for me at all. Because she's like, I need you to support me, and then he's like, well, guess what? I'm not going to talk to you. and then they're not talking, they're fighting, they're not talking, they're not communicating, and then they show up at this party and she's up there by herself.
Because
you know what I mean?
She had sent him a letter, which we don't know the contents of it, but I think you're supposed
so
to.
It's like,
I think you're supposed to suspend disbelief, and like the letter solved a lot of problems, right?
I guess
that's what I got from
but
it.
If I hated it.
What was weird?
I did.
I can't tell at all.
I hated it.
What was weird to me was that last little bit where she's like, they're like talking about it, and they kind of come to that impasse, and then he says, I can't remember exactly what it was, but her last thing to him was like, maybe we don't have to give everything up, basically, because I think he said something like, I love you and I want to be with you, but I can't face the whole backlash or whatever. I think this was kind of the vibe, and she was like, well, maybe we don't have to. And so then I thought she was going to tell him her plan. And then it turns out to like all these letters, and then the mom gets a letter. I still don't know what was in the letter to the mom.
I think she was telling the mom
just a
she
heads
was
up.
going to do that.
Yeah.
It was confusing.
I felt like that conversation of like, stand beside me and support me prepared me for something that then didn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, I don't understand. I didn't get what you were trying to get me to get.
And I
guess
I really do feel that is like a personality difference, because you wanting your husband to stand up next to you is literally standing up next to you, right? And the way I want my husband to stand up next to me is for me to stand up on my own. So I think it's just personality of like, how would that actually be? I don't know if Penelope was a strong enough character at that point, though, to want to stand up there by herself.
Yeah.
And it's not strong if you do want your husband up there, but I feel like knowing she is a wallflower, that's what she probably did want.
I kind of felt the same way, just thinking like this conversation prepared me for something that ended up not being what it was. I felt the exact same way what you were talking about a second ago with the mom and Francesca, where she's like, I thought that was a really beautiful conversation of like, I had this idea that love only looks this one way, and you've shown me that, not all love looks the same.
They're not in love.
But I was like, I thought that was a really nice moment of like a mom trying to just like be there for her daughter and support her daughter, whatever. And then it was like, oh, you don't actually love this guy? Well, then what are we doing here? You know what I mean? Like, I felt like the whole rest of the season was trying to set up this thing that then ended up, I was very confused.
I wonder if he knows she's queer.
I don't know. I know.
Why would she be doubling down so much on it?
I did see a quote from an interview that the showrunner did that basically said, like, she just, the way that I understood the quote, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was basically like, I am the showrunner. I am a queer woman, and I wanted to like make Francesca like me. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, but I didn't get that. I didn't get that the whole time. You know what I mean?
Right,
and I was just very confused by it.
I do wonder too if this is one of those seasons that would have made more sense if you had read the book. You know what I mean? Maybe. I feel like these have gotten really, really popular, and maybe the showrunners felt like they could take more liberties because people would know. Maybe. Right? Like, we've talked about Red, White, and Royal Blue. They take this whole love letter part out that is like what really makes the book so beautiful, and they don't put it in the movie. And it would have been hard to put into a movie. No, it wouldn't have. But
no, it wouldn't have.
But
do a montage.
I think that they assumed. Right. I think they assumed. I'm just picturing them in the dressing room.
That's what I was thinking too. With like fancy hats and
everyone's watching to see what you will do. But I wonder if like you do read Penelope's letters in the book.
I don't know.
Because
that's a good question.
Then those scenes would be like, you'd be like, oh, that the mom is reading that one part.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. That
might be true. I don't know.
If you read the books, we would like to know if those are in there. And these are on my TBR for some time,
right?
But they're honestly kind of at the bottom of it.
Of the priority.
I don't read tons of non-fantasy Regency.
That's kind of how. Yeah. I have one last question about this Bridgerton thing, and then I'll be quiet, and you guys can talk about what else you're watching if it's different than Bridgerton.
Well, mine was Bridgerton. So
okay.
I saw your notes, and I just wrote same Whitney.
I didn't see that. So okay, did you guys feel that this is the spiciest season of Bridgerton?
No.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Who said that?
Nicola and Luke.
He doesn't even lay on her all the way while they're
Thank
fucking.
you. Okay,
I know.
so I saw that a bunch of fans are like, they must have deleted scenes.
I wonder.
And
No, the spiciest scene was
producers-
the first one.
the producers are like, we didn't delete anything. And so I'm like, okay, I don't know what happened.
There was only one sex scene.
She and Nicola and Luke, in I think more than one interview, have made a really, first of all, golf claps to them for the PR that they've been doing for this season, because their interviews are fantastic. They have really great chemistry together. They've been hyping. I have enjoyed watching their interviews more than I liked watching the actual show, the season. Honestly, like it was just way better them interacting together as their actual like real people. But she said this was the spiciest season they've ever done. That they broke furniture because they got so into it filming their sex scenes. That
one chaise lounge that they
that's
laid
what
on?
that's what I'm saying though, because I'm like,
I guess
you
she was
guys-
on top of him at the very end. I guess there was 2 sex scenes.
I'm like,
the second one was barely a sex scene.
What are y'all talking about? Like
Right.
what?
And
What
I'm
is
sorry,
this?
they were like making love. You don't break furniture with that.
That's what she said, that they got told to tone it down because they were too into it and like taking it too far. And then you watch the season, and I'm like, where? Where is this?
I'm going to say one more thing and then we can shut up about this. I don't understand why in the scene where they do, like, not the very last scene where they're having sex, but the one on the chaise lounge, why he is like holding himself up off of her and like gazing into her eyes like that. Like, that, I'm sorry. Like, why? Like, especially it's her first time. It's like, does that hurt? Does it hurt? Like, that's what I felt like he was like looking. I'm like, and like, he like had like one hand on his waist and the other one on the board behind her, and I'm like, are you gonna touch her at all? Like me and my almost 17-year-old daughter, I want to point that out, she's not like 6, we're watching it and we're laughing,
right?
it was so awkward.
But they set it up to be like, oh, you guys just can't even wait.
So if
episode
well,
5 is going to be
think-
so much
if
hotter.
they made them
like,
tone
what?
it down, that might explain why it felt awkward.
Maybe, I don't know,
Maybe.
but
I also don't feel like the character of Colin is super sexy.
I don't
No.
either. But
I think he's a bit of a pansy.
But yeah, I don't know if the editors.
He would put it in your butt without asking.
I don't know if the editors did them dirty. I don't know what happened, but I feel like what they have been saying in their interviews and what actually is on the show, there's a huge disconnect there.
Interesting.
And I'm like, were you guys just lying?
No, I bet
Or-
stuff got edited out.
That's what and now the producers are like, no, we didn't edit anything out.
I think you did.
Well,
maybe you didn't.
So now it's a weird.
Well,
like,
maybe they didn't take out extra scenes, but they had to have edited those scenes. So
I get-
maybe
well,
they
yeah, I
edited
guess,
out
but-
what they told them to like tone down
Anyway.
on. But yeah,
Oh, I know I said that was going to be my last question. I just have one more comment.
we've been talking about Bridgerton for 14 minutes.
Well,
by the
you
way,
know, that's okay.
it's our nerdiest thing, and that's
Right.
what we want to talk about.
Why did they spend so much time humanizing Cressida to have Cressida just
Still
be
be a bitch.
the biggest bitch in the world?
Yeah.
At the like, why? I don't understand. Why did we spend all that time not
She must
on
have
Penelope?
another arc coming up. She has to.
Maybe, but I'm like, you spent all that time not on Colin and Penelope to like get me to like her and understand her so much more, and then she's still a heinous bitch at the end and still like really making horrible choices. And but like, I don't understand why did we spend all that time
I don't know,
for nothing?
The only thing I can think about with that is that like she's trying to be a better person, but she still ultimately is the product of what she was raised.
Yeah, that's true.
So
But I hated that. I would rather have gotten another sex scene of Penelope and Colin.
Yeah.
that wasn't really a sex scene.
That an actual sex
I
scene.
did feel bad for Cressida though, because her mom was like, "Well, see ya.
Yeah,
I know.
Your dad's right. I did all this to you, but go on.
Well, see
Yeah.
you later. That's so true.
Enjoy your big gulp."
Yeah. Were you guys watching anything besides Bridgerton? Mindy, I think you said you
I
were.
actually started a series that is it's really much different than Bridgerton. This was a recommendation to me from a friend of mine, and it's called Them. It's on Amazon Prime, and it's actually about a black family in the 1960s who moved to an all-white neighborhood in LA. It's during the Great Migration, so they came from North Carolina to LA. And not only do they have to contend with the whole racial discrimination nightmare, but there's a paranormal aspect that threatens them also.
Oh.
It is the creepiest show
Interesting.
that I've watched in a long time.
Where is it streaming?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Amazon Prime.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm only a couple episodes into it, but I'm already freaked out. Yeah, it's really good.
I'm listening.
I know. I'm like, maybe I'll watch that later. Is it a show I could watch in my studio, or do you have to pay more attention than that?
maybe.
That's not helpful.
Yeah, I don't
Pay more
know.
attention.
Yeah, you probably do need to pay a little more attention. Again, I'm really early on in it. So you get a lot of like the backdrop of the 1960s
Yeah.
and the racism and that kind of
Setting
stuff.
the context and stuff.
I'm just now getting into the paranormal aspect of it.
I also am the one that started watching Outlander while crafting, and then all of a sudden was like, wait, what are Jacobites?
Outlander, I would say, is a lot. You need to pay a lot more attention to
Right,
than
right,
this,
right.
though.
Then that.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
What about what you guys are listening to?
I'm listening to The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. It's really funny so far. It's about a rom-com writer who meets up with a famous like movie screenwriter who's like the big hit of the time, you know, and he has written a rom-com to work with the studio to like get his action flick produced. They're like, you have to give us this other thing first, and apparently it's like awful, and so she gets sent in to fix it. He's grumpy and doesn't believe in love. She does believe in love, you know, those types of things.
I wonder
it's really
what's going to happen.
I know. And she's forced to stay at his house right now. I have no idea what's going to happen.
Does he only have one bed?
No, he does have 5 guest rooms because, you know,
Oh.
he's like a screenwriter. But
Well.
Does he have a horse?
Only one.
I hope he only has one. And they have to like ride into the heather. But it's really funny so far. And I really, really enjoyed it.
I hope he rides a horse to work. I'm just picturing that
Well,
in like LA.
he seems like a hipster, pretentious dude, so
There
he
you go.
could.
There you
Or a unicycle.
Oh, protect the earth. What are you listening to, Mindy?
I am listening to the new Helena Hunting release that'll be out on July 11th. It's the second one in her Toronto Terror hockey series. And it's called If You Want Me, and it's a dad's best friend age gap, which
I'm listening.
yeah, I'm not usually on board with, but it's also my girl Helena, so I'm giving it a go. I'm really enjoying it so far.
Every time you say Toronto Terror, I think the Roger.
The Roger from 30 Rock.
Toronto Terror.
Well,
Yeah,
the
that's
funny
hard to
thing is
say.
their mascot is like a mad goose,
Oh my gosh.
which makes it even funnier.
Mad like crazy?
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah, or like
That's pretty
an
funny.
irritable goose. Yeah,
That's pretty
Is he
hilarious.
silly?
He's a silly
he's
Billy.
a silly goose.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'm listening to Middle of the Night. I'm still pretty early on. So far, I like it, and hopefully, I'll have more to say next time because hopefully, I'll be finished with it. We'll see.
If not, that's okay. I do want you to text me when you're done with it, though, and let me know what you think.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I will. I like it so far.
Yeah, I did like it. I just can't. There's one sticking point for me.
Now I'll be on the lookout, on the listen out.
Well, what are you loving then, Went?
Well, I actually changed my answer because as we were recording this, I posted Justin Timberlake getting arrested memes this morning.
They're so funny.
We
So
have
funny.
gotten a lot of really positive responses.
Yes.
We don't normally get this much interaction on our memes, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud of the memes.
They're hilarious.
I was nervous about it because I was afraid that people were going to be like, "Don't be mean. He's going through a hard time," and then everyone was like, "Ha ha ha."
He's not going through a hard time. He got a DUI. I mean that.
Well,
that
for him, it probably is a hard time.
right?
But
Well, I guess I read something where he was like looking at the cop and he's like, "This is going to mess up the world tour," and the cop goes, "What world tour?"
apparently the cop was like 22 and has no idea.
no idea who he
He's
is.
like a fresh out of cop school, whatever.
I saw a meme
has no idea who
that
he is.
had that
You know,
conversation.
his mom is like, "What the fuck, man?"
I saw a meme though that showed that conversation, and they're like, "That's my new excuse for everything."
It's gonna ruin
my
tour.
world tour.
It's gonna ruin the tour. But-
We'll just start saying that every time something bad happens. Man, this is going to ruin my tour.
yeah, yeah, but that's what I'm loving. So I'm glad everybody liked it. Go check them out if you haven't looked at those memes. They're pretty good.
I have something I'm loving, I guess. It's like one of those things where I'm like, mental health's important.
Yeah,
I've had a really shitty couple weeks, and I got a new therapist, and she's really sweet. I'm gonna see how it goes. I was telling my husband last night, it's the first time I've ever had a therapist that's younger than me, which is odd for me. But I think, that doesn't mean she can't do
Right.
what I need to have done. Right? She seems really, really great. Was really good about like setting boundaries about like a few things, which I always really appreciate. And I mean, I'm not loving it, but I'm loving it. I mean,
That's exactly
mental
how
health
I
is
feel.
very
Yeah,
important.
absolutely.
And I've needed a therapist for a while, so yay.
Yeah. I have a newer therapist too, and she doesn't just say like, "Yeah, you're totally right," and I get offended. It's like, I know you're doing your job, but
could you not do it?
Could you not make me feel like an ass while you're doing it?
What do you mean I might be wrong? No, I'm not. What about you, Mindy?
I'm loving beaver nuggets.
I'm sorry. Come again?
If you have a beaver nugget, you might.
Right.
So
I don't know what that is.
it's not what you're thinking.
Do you need to go to the OBGYN?
I wouldn't be loving it if that were the case.
Hey, don't mind her. She just has beaver nuggets.
Now you're making me not love them.
Oh, tell me more.
Because now I can't. There's something to eat.
Oh.
So we recently had to go rescue our daughter from a long road trip, and we ended up at Buc-ee's, and they have these things called beaver nuggets, and they're like large. I don't know how to describe them. They're like
Vaginal?
no.
Harry?
Depends on the beaver.
Have you all seen that book series, Brenda and Her Beaver?
Yes.
Oh my god, it's so funny.
Oh,
She needs to do one about Buc-ee's.
Okay, so
crying
beaver
over- yeah.
nuggets.
I knew this conversation was going to take this turn.
They're large.
So
you eat them.
They're like corn pop cereal, but like better. They've got like brown sugar flavor. Y'all just don't know what you're missing.
I'm cool with it. I can't stop.
I got exactly the reaction I wanted, so I'm proud of myself.
I want to use that to describe myself. Like, I'm like corn pops, but better. Oh, man.
I cannot get it together.
Again, this is exactly the reaction I was hoping for. So I'm not sorry.
I'm glad you're enjoying your
They're
beaver
really
nuggets.
good, though.
Oh, man. That was a good one, Mindy. Thank you for that.
Messed up all my eyeliner.
Oh, that was fun.
Let's talk about queer Pride Month.
Oh, man. Who wants to go first?
Well, I wanted to start with just some Pride Month information and stats. I don't think a lot of people really understand how Pride Month got started and we know what it's about, right? But we don't really know why it got started. So I'm trying to not laugh anymore because this is serious. So, as you know, Pride Month is currently celebrated each year in the month of June, but it's honoring the 1969 Stonewall Uprising in Manhattan. Have you all ever heard of this? Mm-hmm. Okay. So, it's important to note for our listeners that some history books call this the Stonewall Riots, but the name has been changed to Uprising as most people believe that the police and media have called them riots to excuse the police brutality that happened during the 6 days of the uprising. Because they're like, no, they were rioting when they were really just like protesting and stuff. So according to Britannica.com, my favorite elementary school, Britannica, in 1969, the solicitation of homosexual relations was an illegal act in New York City, in all cities, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Everywhere.
Gay bars were places of refuge where gay men and lesbians and other individuals who were considered sexually suspect could socialize in relative safely away from public harassment. Many of these bars, however, were subject to regular police, raids and all of that. So one such well-known gathering place was for young gay men, lesbians, and transgender people called the Stonewall Inn, and it was in Greenwich Village in New York. It was called a dark, seedy, crowded bar, reportedly operating without a liquor license. So in the early morning hours of Saturday, June 28th, 1969, 9 policemen entered the Stonewall Inn. Oh, I scrolled too far down on my notes. Hold on. Okay, so they, where was I? I literally lost my spot. Okay. 9 policemen entered the Stonewall Inn, arrested the employees for selling alcohol without a license, roughed up many of its patrons, cleared the bar, and in accordance with New York criminal statute, they authorized the arrest of anyone not wearing at least 3 articles of gender-appropriate clothing. So they took several people into custody. This was the 3rd such raid on Greenwich Village gay bars in a week, right?
Can I ask a question you may not have clarification for? If you had to have 3 items of clothing, if you just had pants and a shirt. That doesn't count?
I mean, I think they were trying to pretty much just be able to arrest everyone.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the time, there were a lot of people outside the bar who did not retreat or scatter as like they almost always did in the past, right? Like they'd be like, run, the police are going to arrest you. So their anger was super apparent and they were vocal as they watched the bar patrons being forced into a police van. They began to jeer at and jostle the police, and they did throw some bottle and debris. So a court accustomed to more passive behavior, even from larger gay groups, the policemen called in reinforcements and barricaded themselves inside the bar while 400 people outside rioted. The police barricade was repeatedly breached and the bar was set on fire. Police reinforcements arrived in time to extinguish the flames, and they eventually dispersed the crowd. So the gatherings outside the Stonewall Inn waxed and waned for about the next 5 days, and many historians characterize the uprising as a spontaneous protest against the perpetual police harassment and social discrimination suffered by a variety of sexual minorities in the 1960s. So, according to the Library of Congress, it's important to note that there were a number of uprisings against police and state brutality, harassment, and entrapment of the LGBTQ community in the U.S. in the years leading up to Stonewall. Stonewall was just kind of like the breaking point, right? So if you wanted to go read what these other uprisings were, and there is a link in the show notes, but one was the Pepper Hill Club raid in Baltimore in 1955. Over 162 people were arrested. Hazel's Inn in Sharp Park, California in February 1956. The Cooper's Donut raid in Los Angeles in 1959. The Black Night Ball in Wisconsin in 1961. Compton's Cafeteria raid in California in 1966, and the Black Cat raid in 1967. So we already had 10 years of these types of protests happening, right? So the first Pride March actually took place on June 28th, 1970, which was the 1-year anniversary of the Stonewall Uprising. So that's how we got the first Pride March.
Very cool.
Was due to this protest.
And unfortunately, over 50 years later, we haven't made much progress.
We've not. We still have people going, why do we have to have a parade?
Yeah.
Because they're marginalized. It's a marginalized group of people that you keep being assholes to. Mm-hmm. Right? Yep. So, that's how we got to where we are, but we still have a lot of work to do.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like with Women's History Month. Just like with Black History Month.
Right.
Well, let's talk about our Pride Month book recommendations. Who wants to go first?
Why don't you go with
me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, first and foremost, friend of the pod, Elle Mitchell, one of my favorite books by her, Broken Reverie. Evie is the main character. She feels stifled. This is just kind of the summary of the book, and then I'll explain why it fits. Evie has what should be the perfect life, but she feels stifled and forced into a box that she doesn't really fit into, and she meets somebody from a brief moment in her past and tries to find herself again. Evie is bisexual, and that's a major part of the issues that she has with her fiance in the book. I will say this book contains infidelity by the female main character, which normally is a big red flag turnoff for me, and I don't like to read stuff like that, but it's Elle, and I trust her as an author. So she does a really, really good job of making you like understand and root for Evie, despite the fact that you don't root for her cheating on her fiance, right? And you guys have read Broken Reverie too, right? Yeah. So I love that book. That's my first one. And next is another series you guys have heard me talk a lot about, The Beast of the Briar series by Elizabeth Helen. Book 1 is Bonded by Thorns. So I've talked a lot about this in the past. It's a Why Choose Beauty and the Beast retelling that includes Rosie has 4 hot fae princes. And 2 of those princes are Dayton and Farron, who have been in love with each other and in a relationship together for years and years. And when Rosie shows up, they make room for her in their relationship as opposed to deciding, do they pick her over each other?
Right.
Which I really, really love. And then I have just a couple more. It wouldn't be a book recommendation if I didn't include The Bonds That Tie. And these are not main characters, but I wanted to include them. Sawyer and Gray are kind of like side characters. Sawyer is the brother of our female main character's best friend, and Gray is his boyfriend. So they're not main characters. They become bigger as the book series goes on, but I wanted to mention them because really the inclusion from the other characters, like literally nobody cares that they're gay. Like it's not a thing. It's not discussed. there's no kind of like self pat on the back moment from the author. Like sometimes in books, characters will think to themselves like, wow, isn't it great that nobody cares that Sawyer and Gray are together? You know what I mean? Like they'll give themselves that moment. Yeah, like they just exist, and it just is. Nobody cares. And I really, really love that. So I recommend that. How great is our society that none of us care? Like nobody thinks that. That's what I wrote in my notes.
That means there actually is a problem.
Yes. I know, right? And then Saint from the Priest series, which I've talked about the series again recently, but here we go again. So the book 3 of the Priest series by Sierra Simone focuses on Aidan, who gave up his millionaire life to become a monk, and he left his boyfriend and love of his life, Elijah, in the process of becoming a monk. Saint follows them as they are reunited for Elijah to write an article about monastery breweries, which is a hard word to say. Breweries. So this book has second chance romance, forced proximity, and really a very beautiful depiction of mental health struggles and also of religion and a religious experience. So I really just enjoyed that a lot. And then last but not least, I just want to briefly mention this because of an upcoming book, not because of a book that's out yet. So Elle Kennedy's Campus Diaries series, which again, I have talked about before. The Graham Effect is book 1 in that series. And then the Dixon Rule is book 2 that just came out. In the Dixon Rule, there are 2 hockey players who are kind of side characters a little bit in the background. They start to get a reputation for the 2 of them having threesomes with girls. And it's discussed in the Dixon Rule. It's like other people are like noticing that it's happening, and then one of those characters has a conversation with one of the main characters in the Dixon Rule where he kind of talks about his conflicting feelings about how these relationships are developing, and he's not sure if he really likes it and how he really feels about it. And apparently the next book in the Campus Diaries series is going to focus on these 2 hockey players.
Oh, okay.
And I guess from what I understand, both of them together, their love interest. So I'm not really sure how that's going to play out. If it's going to be a why choose, if they're going to be the guys together and also the girl.
Right.
I'm not really sure how that's going to play out, but I wanted to mention it because it seems like it fits, maybe. But I'm also the resident.
It's in that like exploring, questioning vein.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm the resident, like, I don't know. So I don't know.
I think it's important that you say that, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So those are my books. They're all good. I like them. What about you guys?
I have quite the variety, although now I'm looking, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of hockey in this one. But
Shocker.
We would expect nothing less. It's like, oh, Whitney mentioned the bonds that tie.
Or, oh, all of Deb's are fantasy.
Right.
I can't believe it.
But I can't obviously talk about anything Pride without mentioning Emily Rath, because really all of her books have a LGBTQ aspect to them, except for, well, no, actually Pucking Wild does, because she's bisexual.
Yeah.
But I wanted to particularly point out Whiskey and Sin, because it is a male Omega-verse novel, and it's just very different from everything else she's written. And it's very, very good. It's a standalone. It's one of those that you don't feel like you have to get invested in. You have to get invested in the world, but you don't have to get invested in like a series.
Yeah.
And it's just really, it's beautiful. It's got a mental health like tone to it as well, and like there's an alpha and an omega, and it's really sweet and a really, really good read. But then she also has her sapphic fantasy romance coming out in December, and it's called North is the Night. So she just like has her little fingers in all aspects of Pride, which just sounds gross, but whatever.
I'm excited about the December book because it's her fantasy book.
I am too. Like, she's been wanting to write fantasy for a long, long time, and I just love that it's a sapphic romance. I think it's branching out quite a bit. I mean, from what she's been doing, yeah. And I just think it's going to be really exciting.
Because she started with the Regency books.
She started with the Regency.
And then moved into the hockey books.
And then moved into the
and now is going into fantasy, right?
Yes.
But she also has the Omega-verse.
And then she has that one little Omega-verse,
gotcha.
yeah. The next one I have is one called Him by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. They co-wrote it. And it's also hockey players. One of them is Out and Proud, and the other one is Exploring His Sexuality. And it's a dual POV between the 2 characters and the 2 authors. So like Serena Bowen writes one POV and Elle Kennedy writes the other one. And there's a sequel called Us, and then there's a novella called Epic about like their relationship and how it grows. And this was the very first audiobook that I ever listened to.
Oh, really?
All the way through. And it was actually a recommendation from Alphabets and Audiobooks.
Oh.
So shout out to him. But it was really, really good. I really enjoyed that one. And then the next one is also a hockey book. Good God. But it's by a friend of the podcast, Kristen Granada. It's the second in her hockey series, but it's an interconnected standalone. So you could read it without having read the other books. And I really love this one because it explores a polyamorous relationship that's FFM, which I feel like is kind of underrepresented right now.
Yeah.
It's about 3 high school friends who reunite later in life, and 2 of them are married, and there's a history with the third. So this is one of the spiciest one in her series so far, and if you read the reviews, many people agree with that. It's just really, really good. It's just, again, something that you don't see very represented out.
Is this in Kristen Granada series? Is it one where you have to start with book 1, or is it like a shared world? You could read them out of order.
It's a shared world, and you can read them out of order.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I actually read the first one, and then I read the third one, and then I went back and read the second one because I don't know why. I think I arc read the third one, and then I was like, oh, I never read the second one. And
you just wanted to be different.
I did. I just wanted to be a rebel. The fourth one I've already talked about, so I'm not going to go into it a whole lot, but it's called A Guy Walks Into My Bar. It's Lauren Blakely. It's hockey adjacent. It's just that one of the guys is a hockey player in the U.S., but it's not even a prominent feature in it. It's just that it's a roadblock because the other guy owns a bar in London. So it's a long distance kind of issue, but they fall in love and they're both pursuing their dreams, so that causes problems. I just recommend the audiobook because Shane East narrates the British character, and it is hot. And then finally, I've got one that's a lot different actually, and it's Simon versus the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. It's a YA coming of age story, and it got a lot of press a few years ago because a movie came out, but the book is excellent. And the main character's gay, but he's not out, and he's been emailing with another guy who is also not out, and they become connected, and he really likes this guy, and he's ready to come out, but his email buddy's not. So it's all about that balance of wanting to be out, but also wanting your love interest to be comfortable enough to come out. And it's kind of like a twist at the end of who it is. So I won't give that away, but it was a really good read. And then I'm just going to throw these out because we've already talked about them on the podcast. I think Deb's going to talk about one of them too, but there's The Gunkle by Stephen Rowley, which is about the gay uncle, and it's not a romance, but it's a really good family feel good book. And then there's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid, another really, really great sort of twist on the whole vibe of bisexuality. And then I think Deb's going to talk about Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston.
I am.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know it was my turn.
Go ahead and do that, Deb.
I will.
So go.
Yeah, my first Pride Month rec, my first 2 are actually by Casey McQuiston. So there's Red, White, and Royal Blue, which we've talked about on the podcast before. It's about the son of the President of the United States falling in love with the Prince of England and their secret affair. And I will say, as I'm going through my books, all of my recs, I'm going to give you the synopsis of the book, but it's all the main characters are queer in some way. So the next book is by Casey McQuiston as well. It comes out in August, and I talked about this, I believe, last week on the podcast, but it's called The Pairing, where 2 bisexual exes accidentally book the same European food and wine tour and challenge each other to a hookup competition to prove they're over each other.
I love that.
That sounds
Been
perfect.
there.
So my third recommendation is actually one of my daughter's favorite books. She was able to ARC read for Ben Alderson, who wrote The Prince of Endless Tides. And this is an fantasy romance inspired by The Little Mermaid and Atlantis.
Oh.
And the tagline is, what if the prince and the sea witch fell in love in a world ruled by evil mermaids and vengeful gods?
Ooh.
My daughter said it was amazing.
Wow.
My next suggestion is Kiss Her Once for Me by Alison Cochrane. It's a festive romantic comedy about a woman who fakes an engagement with her landlord only to fall in love with his sister, which I think is kind of hilarious.
That's cool.
And the next 2, I'm not going to go into great detail with because I've talked about them at length on the podcast over the last couple weeks. The first one's Now Conjurers by Freddie Cloche that just came out, and then Don't Let the Forest In by C.G. Drews, which comes out in August as well. And then finally, I recommend If Tomorrow Doesn't Come by Jen St. Jude. And the synopsis is, we are okay meets They Both Die at the End in this YA debut about queer first love and mental health at the end of the world and the importance of saving yourself no matter what tomorrow may hold.
Oh, that sounds nice.
I thought I had like a shit ton of recommendations, and I did. I just got through them quickly. I don't know how I did that. So yeah, and all of these will be linked in our show notes as well.
Yeah.
So everybody can go click on them.
A lot of books to add
Yes.
to your
to your TBR.
You have like one more week left in June. Get through them.
Or you could just read Pride Month Rex all year round.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. I thank you for saying that. I will say before we move into the nerdiest thing of the week, Whitney, I just wanted to speak up about how to be an ally all year long, not just in June. There are a couple of things that you can do. The first one being is just to speak up. Don't tolerate anti-LGBTQ behavior or jokes or anything that someone might think is funny, even if it, I'm like, don't be an asshole.
Right.
Make sure that you're fixing issues of misgender. So, for example, if someone identifies as a he, don't call them a she. Make sure that other people are not doing that either. And at the same time, it's perfectly fine and expected at this point that you are asking for someone's pronouns without making assumptions about them.
Can I add to that? Because my oldest, we went through several, like in their journey, his journey went through several different iterations of whether he was bisexual, lesbian, like he went through a lot just trying to figure out who he was. And when he was the very first time when he came out as transgender and said he was binary, it was they, them pronouns. And I kept screwing it up. Like I just did. Because when you live with someone for 16 years and call them something, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I kept like beating myself up about it. Like I would say it and I'd be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And like I would make a big deal out of it. And he was very kind and said, you know what? As a transgender person, we really just would appreciate you correcting yourselves and moving on and not making a big deal out of it. And that was very eye-opening to me because they're like, it's not like it's supposed to be this big thing and you're not supposed to like beat yourself up about it because it just is.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And they understand that people are learning and that they're going to make mistakes. So I would say the majority of, I guess everybody's different, but the majority of transgender individuals that I've run into have been the same way. Just correct yourself and move on.
Right. So, and this kind of goes with this too. Well, not really, but make sure you're educating yourself on issues within the queer community. It's important to not only read news and things that are happening about what's going on in your life, right? Mm-hmm. Especially for a marginalized group of people. And just make sure that you're understanding the LGBTQ history and that you're understanding your own privilege and your unconscious bias when it comes to a group of people that need more support. So just make sure you're being an ally all year long. Yeah. Don't be a dick. That's really all it boils down to.
Yeah.
Words to live by.
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick.
Well, shall we discuss our nerdiest things of the week?
Yes.
Who wants to
Let's
go
do
first?
Who has the most?
I only have one.
I only have one.
Oh, I have the most this time. That's rare, actually. So my first one is that I booked 2 upcoming reading weekends, one for July and then one for next February, because we decided we needed to get it on the calendar at book club last night. And then we also booked our book club water slide date, or we picked our dates. We haven't actually booked it yet. And then also, we've talked about this on the podcast before. I have a free little library out in front of my house, and I actually bought a little stamp to stamp the inside of the book with, so you can see what free little library it came from.
Oh, that's awesome.
cute.
I
I'm
love
excited
that
about
idea.
it. Yeah.
that's cute.
So I'm going to be out there stamping up later after the podcast. It just came in yesterday.
A wild Friday night.
I know. I'll be out there with a glass of wine in my pajamas, stamping up books.
Oh, that's funny. What about you, Mindy?
Well, I looked at mine and I realized I sort of have 1.5, but
You lied.
I lied. But it all goes with the same thing. So on Tuesday night, I think I mentioned on last episode that I was going to see a concert, and it was Jenny Lewis. And when I ordered the tickets, it was with an old college friend of mine that we have recently reconnected here in Louisville. And then it's in Lexington. So I reached out to another college friend and said, would you like to go to dinner with us? And we're going to this show. And he was like, oh, I'm going to that show too. They were like literally 5 rows in front of us. It was hilarious. So we all met up for dinner with another friend in Lexington, also from the college. And we just had so much fun, like reminiscing about college stuff. And then went to the concert and fangirled over Jenny Lewis because she's
adorable.
She is the coolest person ever. She's the kind of cool I strive to be. I just think she's an amazing woman, an amazing spokesperson also for Pride. She's just very outspoken about LGBTQ issues. And she's just a wonderful person. She's lovely.
Can I ask where you ate dinner?
It was called The Goose.
The Goose?
Yes.
Oh. My sister and I are going to a comedy show in Lexington
really?
in September.
Where is it?
I don't know.
Is it if it's at the Lexington Opera House, it's within walking distance of this place. It was pretty good.
I'll have to look that up and see.
I had the best martini I've ever had there. It was like a limoncello, like fresh.
Ooh.
So good. Yeah.
Well, we're staying the night in Lexington.
Well, then you need to go.
Because both of us are driving an hour from where we actually live to go to the comedy show. So I'll have to look that up. Thank you so much. Well, my nerdiest thing of the week is not just reading Manacled, but apparently I read Manacled suspiciously fast. And some of our followers were questioning if, like, I'm on something. Which I thought was really funny.
They said, "What's wrong with me? Why did it take me so long to read this?" And I wrote back and I said, "For the record, it took me 9 days. It took Whitney 48 hours."
Yeah, I think it was actually less than that. But I don't know. I read really fast. Although I did tell one of our followers, I was like, listen, I read really fast, but then I reread and find that I missed a lot of stuff because I'm reading too fast. So don't be like, oh, Whitney reads so fast and I read too slow. Like, no, you're actually getting all of the details. Whitney's just like getting the high plot point, like the high points, you know? So anyway.
That's how she has time to reread things 8 times.
Yeah, that's why I have to reread them 8 times. Wait a second, whose favorite? Well, that is it for today's episode. Please keep listening for our interview with Antoine Bondelay and visit us on Thursday. And everybody, enjoy your beaver nuggets.
Bye.